Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Mind Management Mentors podcast. I'm your host, Cuddy Cudworth, the UK's leading mind management coach, and welcome to another episode. Now, we're always talking about how we can manage our minds. We can manage our minds effectively starting tomorrow if we want to. And when I'm a big believer that once we have choice, then we have options. Most people and a lot of people don't overgeneralize, but a lot of people don't realize what choice we have to start managing our minds, managing our limiting beliefs, getting past traumas, and for how easy it can be once we start taking those strides to moving forward. And today, our guest is Alex Murphy. Tell everybody what do you do and how we can manage our minds, but just keep it short and sweet, Alex, all the way from Edinburgh, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. Alex, what do you do?
Oh, long and short of it is I'm a nutrition coach. I teach adults how to eat. So that's the way my parents explain it to other people. Doesn't sound all that impressive, but essentially the thing that I do is teach people how to improve their diet mindset so that they can be more consistent and have greater long-term weight loss success.
This is going to be very close to my heart. This is actually now I know where the conversation. Alex, I've got the line where we're going. So, as a
Cool.
nutritional coach, and I've even when I listen to it, I've always been a big guy, and I used to do strongman training about 2 years ago. I did strongman training, so I you eat to get strong. Uh, And then once I stopped doing strongman training, I did carry on eating like I was doing the strongman training, which
Yeah.
didn't bode well. And then I found out I had a gluten intolerance. So I've been going through this minefield of I can't have gluten anymore, which has been an absolute game changer. But you said something right off the top. Basically, I teach people how to eat, which we can laugh at, but it's genuinely a thing, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
we do have to be taught how to eat. And I'm going to throw in something controversial later in about the food triangle, which
Mm.
is I don't know what if you now are you are you fully aware that the food triangle is bollocks?
I certainly think it's steered people in the wrong direction for a few too many years. Yeah.
It really has. So we'll cover that. So when you are helping people learn how to eat, what are you helping to people to do?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing that I see, and my background as a coach and training was in CrossFit, so I've worked with very extreme people for a long time. But I think from the 90s and 2000s, everything has been kind of based on shame and guilt. So there was all these kind of quotes in the fitness industry years ago that were like, if you're fat and ugly, go to the gym and you'll just be ugly. Like, so all this stuff. And then there's the Kate Moss quotes. I can't remember exactly how it was, but it's about nothing tasting as good as how skinny feels. And there's all this kind of stuff like the Weight Watchers and the Slimming World stuff. I think everyone's been brought up on this idea of fitness and being a certain weight because you're not good enough if you're not a certain weight. And all these diets have kind of been at the extreme level of nutrition. So there's never anything that's been quite in the middle that works around people's lifestyles. Everything has been based around shifting your lifestyle to fit a diet or a weight loss plan. So a couple of things I work really hard on with people is using the right source of motivation. So shame and guilt are great for short term, but probably not for long term. And then finding a more balanced approach that doesn't revolve crash dieting, cutting out loads of foods and different food groups, and finding something that fits to people's lifestyles because they don't want to change too much at the moment because that just creates friction between the things they have to give up to achieve the outcomes they want.
So the more and more I learn, the more and more I'm dumbfounded by how stupid I have been for such many, many, many years.
Well, you've
How is
probably
it?
done the best with what you've been given. I would say that the industry in general has let people down for maybe 20 plus years now.
So, and I have mentioned this on previous posts, and but I know that the outcome at the end is you go back to eating the way that you are. I actually really was a big fan of fasting. The control,
Mm,
the understanding that I took from when I relinquished the power of what food had over me by doing long-term fasts. I was like, oh my God, I don't actually have to eat the way that I've been eating. We're not going to talk about fasting too much, but you mentioned Slimming World. Now, I did Slimming World as I was growing up. I did Slimming World because my mum did Slimming World. Now, looking back now, Slimming World, as much as it works, really does mess with the way that you eat, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm not like I haven't been through the process of it, thankfully, but what from people have told me, it's like, you're allowed certain foods or you're labeling certain foods as sins, which again ties in and contributes back to the guilt mindset.
When somebody's come to you from Slimming World and that you say to them, "Oh, by the way, you can go and have that cookie today," and they come back with, that's seven sins. I can't have that cookie because then I want
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want I want the vodka on a Friday night, so that's my sins there. How do you have to reframe their minds on that?
It's great. I was at another, you and I both met at a networking event recently, but I was at a networking event a while ago, and there was pastries there. I'm a big pastry fan, and I was tucking into one when someone's like, "Oh, are you allowed to eat that?" Which is just my favorite thing to hear as a nutrition coach. But someone I was talking to actually stood next to me, just went, "Hey, you're allowed to eat whatever you like. You just have to account for it." And I thought that's just the most beautiful summary of it I've ever heard. And I think when you allow people the space and flexibility to say, okay, I'm allowed this cookie or I'm allowed this bar of chocolate, they start to realize, do I actually want it because I'm hungry? Or do I want it because I'm stressed, bored, emotional, because it's the certain time of day? And they actually start to do a lot of self discovery themselves where they go, okay, it's not that this thing is evil or it's going to wreck my diet, but I'm just kind of responding to some sort of emotional need here. And then from that, a lot of it becomes self discovery, which is fun as a coach.
It's the emotion. People eat in the emotional states, don't they?
Hmm.
How
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
help somebody pass that, Alex?
Good question. The first thing that we do is, I have to know my boundaries here. There's times that, like last night, for example, we went into some goal setting stuff and we were looking down layers of motivation. So for most people, they'll start and they'll say, I want to be healthier or fitter. Okay, why do you want to be healthier or fitter? Well, to get back into the dress I used to wear. Okay, why is that important to you? Well, I want to feel confident in my own skin again. Okay, why is that inconfident? And then you'll get to one or two layers where, like you said at the start, there might be a trauma, there might be a scar, and I know full well not to touch that stuff if it's open. But coming back to the emotional stuff, I think understanding where your emotions come from is a big start, but then also having tools to cope with it is a huge one. So the first thing that we'll get everyone to do in our program is develop a stress hack list. And that's, 5 to 10 things that are healthy, easy to do, and help combat your stress or emotions without resorting to chocolate, alcohol, or whatever your big vice is. So giving people other tools is a really big step. Tools and awareness, I would say.
And I know I saw the process. That's the five whys from NLP. I saw the five whys to get down.
Yeah,
I was listening. I was like, that's bang
yeah,
on. That's absolutely perfect. I love that because that really is a powerful thing. Why do they want to make that change? Um,
yeah.
and again, not an expert. You are, Alex. Are you a firm believer in literally you're just looking for that 500 calories deficit and then you'll get a slower loss, but you'll get the longer gains at the end?
From where most people join our program, I take a 5 to 10% deficit at the start.
Yeah.
Because 500 is just a bit too broad for someone who is on, 1,500 calories. That's a third of their calories just wiped out. And for someone who's maybe at a higher end, it's not as much of a percentage. So we just use 5 to 10%, and we make the focus on abundance at the start. So yes, your deficit is important, but the things I would like you to do first are get as close as you can to a pretty high protein target that we set and start getting fruit and vegetables 200 grams on every single plate that you have. And I guarantee if you're hitting close to those two targets, you won't be feeling like you need to go anywhere near your maintenance levels. So the deficit just becomes easier because you're not focusing on the avoidance. And it's tricky. It's tricky for people whose lifelong dieting routine has been slash the calories in half from day one, lose weight as quick as possible in the first 2 weeks, and then mess it up. It's very difficult for them to go, I'm eating so much food. Like, this is force feeding. How am I going to lose weight? But, like, I hate to say it, the magic kind of happens for a lot of people at that stage when they realize there's a different way of doing things.
And you, so Alex, you look like and I met you, I did meet you in the networking and things like. And by the way, I always say to everyone, "Do you want to do a podcast?" And everyone always, "Yeah, yeah, I'll do it." I love doing podcasts. It's a really good way to network and have those conversations. However,
Yeah.
you look pretty much like a stellar Adonis human being, Alex. You have the looks, you have and I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying you have the genetics. However, I'm 47. I have got double chins. I have completely changed the way that I think about food because I have to because of gluten and stuff like that.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm so clever. I've learned how to make lemon curd tarts gluten free. So it's not
Oh,
like I don't know
nice.
what I'm doing.
That's a
I'm like,
favorite of
no,
mine.
I've made the perfect. I made them yesterday. Even my wife was like, What are those?" I'm like, "These are gluten free lemon tarts. They're absolutely amazing." So, but for me, looking at you, Alex, and this is purely on judgment. I'm like, has Alex ever been overweight? Does he understand the frustration that I have as a 47-year-old who's got double chins, who still thinks I'm actually quite fit? So, Alex, tell me about you and your weight loss journey.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So you're currently looking at what I would say is the not the most in shape I've ever been version of me, and that's completely fine. I'm at a point now where fitness serves a very different purpose than it did maybe 5, even 7 years ago in my life. Um, I had a weird experience where, like, up until maybe the age of 13, I was relatively skinny, I would say. I got going to the gym to try and be a bit stronger for rugby. I took that so extreme that I piled on loads of weight, not bad weight, I would say, but I got super big when I started going to the gym. So that was a strange experience. Um, you're asking, have I ever been overweight? I could probably pull up the photo on my phone. But when I got to university and you hit the freshers week super hard, and a couple of months later, I came home and I opened the door. My mom's like, "Whoa!" Like she physically said that out loud, which is not a great thing to hear. Um, but yeah, I had that experience, and that was a big wake up call when my family were starting to go like, "Hey, you've put on like a bit weight here." Um, so yes, I've had that experience, and it's taken a long time for me to work through that. I think the way I've arrived at my sort of career path now and our program is I always had a terrible relationship with food from very early. Like always, one thing we're programmed to do, a lot of us, if you have strict mothers, is finish your plate every meal, even when you're full.
Lick
And
it
that's
clean, I
programmed in
think I
over
was told.
exact. Yeah, yeah. And the amount of
No
people who are
waste
like,
in this house.
yeah, exactly, exactly, and the amount of people who've experienced that as well. So my relationship with food was pretty poor from an early age, but I was always so active and so sporty that it wasn't really a problem until it became a problem. And even then, when I started the weight loss journey as a 18, 19-year old, it was just the exercise part that was working. I started going to CrossFit. It's one of those things that once you start doing it, you're addicted very, very quickly. And it wasn't probably until a year or two into CrossFit, I even considered changing my diet because that progress just slowed. Um, so that's been the process for me of my sort of fitness journey, I guess, over time.
Yeah. So you're definitely coming from a place of knowledge and understanding that struggle, which I think would be really, really helpful for a lot of your clients and things like that.
Yeah,
So what's some of the biggest wins that you've had with your clients, Alex?
good question. It's easy to say things like, oh, this client has lost 10 kilos. This client has completely changed how they feel. I've had some clients go from like being really uncomfortable in swimsuits to being able to do triathlons and CrossFit workouts at the pool and things. One of them that really stuck out for me, though, and I didn't actually hear this directly, but at one of our last client events, one of my clients, Kate, had come to us really uncomfortable and overweight, and she had lost a ton of weight inside our program. At our events, she'd managed to like kind of branch out a bit more socially, which was something that was a real concern for her at the beginning. But the biggest thing for her is that she had a career change. She'd gone from working in like finance in a banking sector to taking a coding course, applying for jobs in the tech sphere. And she had said to my partner at the time, she's like, I would never have had the confidence to do that until I joined Virtue Health and gone through this process. So that for me is, we talked about the 5 whys, going from like surface level stuff to really life changing, impactful stuff. That one is one that sticks out for me.
Definitely moving away from the surface level. I love that. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. So, we're gonna go a little bit deeper into, especially with GLP-1, the new medication that's going around. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on is it Ozempic? Is it called Ozempic and Manjaro?
Yeah, those are the two main ones. I think it's making a lot of coaches uncomfortable because it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And I'm going to say there's a few people I know who have started taking it and they've tried everything else before, and
Yeah,
this is starting to work for them.
yeah,
So I have to say, in that way, it's a positive. Like there's a lot of people with just a barrier to entry going, I've struggled with weight my whole life. I'm severely overweight, and this is actually working for me. So I have to say, look, in that sense, it's a positive. It's getting a lot of people, I don't want to say off the couch, but over that first hurdle.
yeah.
Is it addressing people's relationship with food that probably got them to that place? No. So, if someone wants to be on the drugs their whole life, fine by them. But I think at some point it get them over that first barrier is great, but then long term the behaviors and habits and beliefs and attitudes around food probably need addressing first, which is more where I would fit in, to be honest.
And I'll lead you into this because I found out what's the biggest misconception about Manjaro? Is it Manjaro? Is that what it's called, Manjaro?
Yeah, Ozempic's the one that I recognize used most often, but I've definitely heard Manjaro.
Yeah, so that's all over
Yep.
TikTok. So that's the new one. That's been out
Okay.
for a while and things like that. What's the biggest misconception that people have about Manjaro?
That's a good question. You're potentially asking the wrong person here because, like I said, I've not gone super deep down the hole with it.
Yeah,
But I know kind of roughly where it's fitting into people's weight loss journeys. Biggest misconception, I guess people are probably looking at some of the results that, like, especially celebrities are getting,
yeah.
and they're starting to think this will solve all my problems. And I don't know if it's a new enough drug that we know about the side effects yet, but I know that it kind of completely alters your appetite and maybe how you view certain foods. So, yeah, that's a good question. It's probably something you could find an expert on. But yeah, that's my understanding of it.
So,
Band-aid
Alex, I
solution, I
will
think.
absolutely, I'll chip in with you. The biggest misconception that people have about Manjaro is you stop eating on it. And the more and more
Mm,
research that I've been doing is actually you need to eat a certain amount and then you still satiated for longer and then it holds on to
yeah,
that and not holding on to the fat. So if anybody goes into it with a fasting mindset, get onto the Manjaro jab and then start fasting, the body starts holding on to the fat. So it needs to hold on to
yes.
something. So you need to actually eat. So the biggest misconception that's going around at the moment with Mount Gyro is, oh, I can stop eating. Is actually no, and that's where you come in, Alex. That's the beauty of Mount Gyro for you is like
Yeah,
actually take the jab. Let me show you how to eat. Get your macros in, get your proteins in, and get the fibrous food that you're going to need. That's going to help you stay satiated for longer,
yeah,
which is going to help with that weight loss. So actually, for you, Alex, it's you're welcome. By the way, Alex, you're welcome.
thank you very much. Yeah. No, listen, it's good that we can both learn off each other. That's something I wouldn't have known before now.
Absolutely. And you know, and I'll be honest with you, the whole reason I learned about that is Team RH, which is in your industry and very, very helpful and
Yeah.
like that. And I'm sure you've done a lot of research with them as well. And they've gone down that route with plants and things like that. So it's actually a really good movement forward and like that, Alex. So Alex, you are located in Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's
Tell
right.
us where you're located and what you're doing in Edinburgh.
So I'm in Leith at the moment. When I went to university, I went to Newcastle, did 3 years of studying there and 3 years working in gyms and stuff after that. Mid-pandemic, I moved home and I moved into Porty with my now fiance. I loved living there. It was so nice. And unfortunately, we had to move because our landlord wanted to move back in. But living in Porty was just so, I don't think I've experienced any because we were 200 meters off the beach. It's so peaceful and quiet. That was just a really nice part of the world to live in for a while. And I know we're only like half a mile down the road now in Leith, but yeah, that's where we're kind of settled for the time being.
Perfect. And how can we get in contact with you, Alex?
A couple of ways you can find me on Instagram is the easiest one at Coach Alex Murphy with an underscore on the end. You can head to the website virtuhealth.com. That's VRTU health.com. Those are probably the two main ways to get in contact with me, or just reach out on LinkedIn or a profile like that, I guess.
Perfect. And to help people managing their minds, because the Mind Management Mentors podcast is all about helping people
Yeah.
manage their minds. What top three things could somebody start doing tomorrow, Alex, that would help give people better choice over their food options?
Good question. First one, I think for me would be a self concept. And we do that when at the start of our program. Now that's a little bit heavier, but that looks a lot like splitting into buckets of your past self, your present self, your future self, and digging into the past and go, right, who was that person? What were the big events that shaped their lives? What were their attitudes and how do they feel about themselves? And then going through that same thing for who you are now in the present moment and who you want to be in the future. It's really good for just unlocking some beliefs that you've maybe had about food in the past and how that's shaped your identity at the moment, and then setting some aspirations to go, okay, best case scenario, if you were the person that you're looking to become, right? That future version of yourself that's really aspirational. What would they do on a daily basis? How would they sleep? When would they wake up? What would their routines look like? And you can kind of reverse engineer a plan from that or behaviors from that. Um, and then that gives you a playbook to go, right, if I take these steps every day, I'll become that person. Um, so that's that's deep work. That takes a lot of time. That takes probably a couple of weeks when people join our program first. The second thing I would say is notice, name, and decide. So that's the kind of little habit breaker, right? Because there's always a trigger, an emotion, an emotional response, and then a habit or a behavior is formed from that. So what I would say is start bringing some awareness to the next time you notice yourself going for the chocolate bar or going to order the takeaway. Put like a 5-minute timer on your phone and just go, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? Is it hunger? Is it boredom? Is it some sort of routine thing? What am I going to name this? Is it the 4 o'clock office snack munchies that I'm feeling right now? And then decide what you're going to do about it. So notice, name, and then decide, am I going to ignore this and push through until later on in the day when I have dinner? Or am I going to decide to mindfully indulge in this because I know one biscuit isn't the end of the world? And when I eat mindfully, I allow myself to stop before the damage is done. So maybe that's like two massive things there. But that would be the first couple of things, I think. A really basic approach with notice, name, decide. And then if you want to do some deeper work on the self concept, I think that's really valuable. But that's, like I say, deeper work.
That's two, Alex. We said three.
Okay, last one for mind management. Start sleeping more.
Do you know it's a thing, isn't it? It really is.
Start sleeping more. Yeah, 100%.
I was,
It regulates so much from your appetite, your energy, your mood, your recovery. All those things get so much better when you sleep.
and you burn a lot of calories when you're sleeping. You weren't convinced on
Potentially.
that one, Alex. You were. That was a
I don't know
slow
about
nod.
that. I don't know
Tell me I'm
about
wrong, because this might be one of those ideas
that.
I was taught and understood that you actually burn a lot of calories when you're sleeping. Please tell me if I'm
I
wrong.
don't
I
know
don't know
so
where I
much
got
about
that
that.
from. I don't know where I got
I
that
think
from.
I don't know so much about burning the calories whilst you're sleeping. But what I do know is it allows your brain to process memories and information a little bit better, right? So you're actually recording and helping your thoughts. You'll understand that you have deep sleep and you have REM cycles, and one is really beneficial for like physical recovery, but without the other, and I'm confused on which one, but without the other, your emotional regulation is going to be all over the place, and not to mention like your hunger. If you're hitting your hunger spike early in the morning with cortisol, so it should be there, and whether you want to fast or not, it's entirely an individual thing, but all of that stuff, mood, hunger, emotional management, that will all be managed really, really well. Digestion by sleeping more. I don't know so much about calories burned whilst asleep, but we can leave that one for another day.
Where did I get that from then? Because you are the food expert. Where did I don't know if it. I can't remember where I
I
learned
think
that
people
from
people
then.
get a bit people get a bit confused by like calories burned, and I think there's an overemphasis on the calories burned thing. Like a great example is everyone will talk about like professional gamers. Oh, they burn so many calories, like they burn off all these calories because they're cognitively working very hard. And some of my clients in the past have been like, I played golf with my Apple Watch on and it said I burned 3,000 calories. So I have to eat another 3,000 calories to match that. And I'm like, okay, that's maybe a little bit aggressive. And those trackers are so inaccurate. It's
Yeah, they are.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So people always want to, when they get a set of calories from us, they'll have higher days for like the top end of your deficit, and they'll have slightly lower days that are slightly more aggressive into the deficit. And they always want to add like, well, I did a CrossFit class and it was 800 calories. Can I add that on? And like, no, just stay between these two levels. You'll feel more than full. And don't get concerned with what your Apple Watch is telling you. I think that changes the game for people.
Oh wow, absolutely fantastic. So let's talk about the food triangle. And when I said the food triangle, Alex, I knew you were well
Yeah.
versed in it because I was like, wow. Because I'd been talking about this, I'd been having a chat with someone else, and I'm sure Jordan Peterson mentioned this as well in one of his podcasts of
Mm.
how much bullshit around the food triangle. So, Alex, as the nutritional coach, tell everybody what the food triangle is and why it might not be as accurate or as true as what people think.
Yeah, well, I hope this doesn't turn into a conspiracy theory podcast,
Not a
but the
conspiracy theory.
conspiracy,
Oh,
not a conspiracy, but the theory is that the typical food triangle that everyone's looking at or is used to looking at, maybe in doctor's appointments or things like that, the base of the pyramid is filled with whole grains and carbohydrates, which typically are manufactured. So there's a bigger industry of carbohydrate production, right? So you can think like breads, pastas, all this stuff. And then you go further up the pyramid, and is dairy is in second, correct?
I just know that
I'm trying to.
the big focus was on grains at the bottom
Yeah,
and how
yeah,
much the
exactly.
grains
And
were going
and
to
the
be
theory,
used and how much they're healthy. Yes.
yeah. So a typical food pyramid looks like the grains at the bottom,
Yeah.
mostly your carbohydrates. Then it's vegetables up, fruit and vegetables next, reasonable, and then it goes to dairy and meat products at the top. Now, we would be talking now about flipping that so that most vegetables are at the bottom. Like, I'm not saying everyone needs to be vegan, but a plant-based diet is a very, very healthy way of doing things. Up from there, I would say meat comes next. So fruit and veg down the bottom, meat comes next, if that's your option of dietary choice. Then I would start to get into whole grains and dairy, and then at the top I would have dietary fats, so things like coconut oil, avocado oil, nuts, seeds, if you feel like you actually need it added to your diet.
Fantastic. So now we know what the food triangle is. Why is a lot of people
Yeah.
saying it's bullshit?
Do you mean why are people saying the first one is bullshit?
Why are they referencing or why does that? It's not a conspiracy theory at all. I think the conspiracy theory would be to say that Quaker Oats are the one that created, or Kellogg's created the food triangle. I think that
Yeah,
might be the conspiracy theory part of it.
yeah, exactly.
So with so many different diets out there, and are you versed in carnivore diet? Are you understanding of the carnivore diet?
Yeah, I understand carnivore.
And people are having a lot of success with that, especially with the inflammation of the body and stuff, because it does kind of take out a lot of carbohydrates and it takes away a lot
Yeah,
of the gluten. To be fair, it takes away a lot of the gluten. It's just meats,
yeah,
fats, and heavy dairy, right? I think the
yeah,
misconception that most people would is, oh, I can go and eat a carnivore diet, oh, and I can eat 5,000 calories because it's carnivore. It's like, no, because you still need to be in a
yeah,
deficit, right? You
yeah,
still need to be in a deficit.
yeah.
You can have a block of butter. You can have a block of butter, not a problem, as long as it's in the deficit. So,
Yes, exactly.
what's your thoughts around carnivore diet?
I like this question. So I would explain this to people that I probably spend 5 to 10% of my coaching time with clients talking about food, and I spend 90% of my time talking to them about their attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, and stuff.
Oh,
Because that's really what's going to get you to stick with this. The way I look at carnivore, keto, intermittent fasting is they're tools. They are just tools to achieve the same thing, which is a calorie deficit. Sometimes people can get confused and think, well, because I'm not eating carbs, it must be burning fat, the fat that's in my body, and dietary fat is different than the adipose tissue fat that's on your body. So they're tools. You want to use the right tool for the right job. And if it works for you, great. I know I'm big on practicality, and I know that too much friction in a behavior is not going to work for everyone. So, for example, I have clients who are mothers of two, run their own business, are trying to get training in and cook for the whole family. If I asked her to go on a carnivore diet and just start serving meat at dinner with nothing else, that might be quite difficult for her. So I'm big on what's practical. And for most people, like I said, they've come from a slimming world background where everything is like, take this away, take that away. You know, you can't have this, can't have that. I'm big on addition diets. So add more meat to your plate, add more protein to your plate, add more fruit and veg, and then see what there's room left for. But if carnivore is working, it's probably working for the same reason that keto and intermittent fasting are working, that you're just massively satiated from the amount of protein and fats that you're eating, and you're removing something from your diet. So you're naturally going to find it easier to be in a calorie deficit.
Yeah. And what do you do for gluten-free people, Alex?
They generally are okay managing their own diets. I would say if they're like, they know themselves well enough by that point. I've not worked with too many celiacs, but again, I don't really recommend, I don't put food plans into our program too much because they're a little bit too strict and rigid. I would say, look, here's the food numbers I want you to focus on as far as macros and calories go. You're an adult, figure out what that looks like for you. So that's generally their responsibility.
I like that. So when somebody's coming to you, they're actually not coming to you for food or a food plan. You're looking at I like the fact that you said 90% of the diet is in the behavior and the habits and the
Yeah.
bias about things. That's fascinating. And that's really powerful. That's the power of coaching, isn't it? Because the food, do the food, and it's funny because we talked about it when you mentioned. Go on.
The way I would explain it to people is like your mum or a sister or cousin could say, how do I lose weight? What do I need to eat? And you could probably point to all the foods, like eat more of this, eat a bit less of that. You could probably point to all the foods, but it's still such a struggle for people. And obesity rates are on the rise. We're catching up with America in terms of the sheer volume of people who are overweight. Like I think America's numbers are slightly more extreme. Like they have severely overweight people, but generally as a population, I think our numbers of obesity are on the rise.
Perfect. Not perfect. There's a good thing, but no, it is.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's why people are looking towards GLP and things like that. Yeah. No, but honestly, Alex, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share with us, Alex, today?
Not so much, but I think those 3 starting points are a great place for most people to go to. And I would just say to anyone who's listening is stop giving yourself a hard time, because all that shame and guilt about eating the food, it's not working for you.
The title of the podcast will be How to Relinquish Food Shame.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. I love that.
We love that. Yeah, with Alex Murphy. How to Relinquish Food Shame. With Alex Murphy. And on that bombshell, thank you so much for being on this episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed. It can! Starting with the self-concept of looking at the way that you want to look, the way you want to feel, and moving from past, present into the future is going to be just as powerful as changing the food that you eat, because that's where the change happens. I think that's absolutely powerful, Alex. As always, big love from Cuddy. Alex, anything from you?
That's all good, everyone. Have a great week.
Absolutely perfect. As always, big love from Cuddy, and I'll see you in the next episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed.